Danger doesn't usually announce itself with sirens or shouting. It doesn't kick the door in or make a scene. Most of the time it just shows up quiet and confident, like it already knows you don't matter. That night, sitting behind the wheel with rain tapping against the windshield and red and blue lights painting the road behind me, I didn't feel scared at first. I felt tired, the kind of tired you get when you already know how the story usually goes. Yeah, that happened. My name's Ava Brooks, and I was 19 when it happened. Sophomore year college kid, athlete, decent grades, a future that looked pretty clean on paper. I was driving home through Red Haven, one of those towns split right down the middle, expensive houses on one side, forgotten streets on the other, and somehow the line between them always felt like a trap. I wasn't speeding, wasn't texting, wasn't doing anything wrong, but when those lights came on, my stomach still dropped. You know what I mean? That feeling where your brain runs through a checklist before your heart even catches up. Hands visible, window down. Don't argue. Don't move too fast. Don't give them a reason. The officer took his time walking up like he wanted me to sit there and think about it. His name was Mercer, Officer Lane Mercer, and the first thing he said wasn't hello or why he stopped me. It was license and registration. No eye contact, just that flashlight drifting around like he was already looking for something. I asked if I could reach for my bag, polite, careful, and he leaned in close, shined the light straight into my eyes and said he smelled weed. Just like that. No hesitation, no doubt. I told him I didn't smoke, told him I was an athlete, told him he could search the car if he wanted, and he smiled. Not a friendly smile, more like a thank you for saying exactly what I expected kind of smile. He told me to step out into the rain, told me to turn around, spread my feet wider than felt necessary, and his hands stayed on me longer than they needed to. Cold rain soaked through my hoodie, my sneakers slid a little on the pavement, and I remember thinking, don't fall, don't give him that. When I asked what I did wrong, he said my taillight was broken. It wasn't. I knew it wasn't, but saying that only made his grip tighten. The cuffs went on fast metal, biting into my wrists, and he pushed me forward against my own car. You kids always think you're special, he muttered, like this was a lesson he'd taught before. When he pulled my phone from my pocket, the screen was glowing, not with texts or social media, but with something darker, quieter. He asked what it was, and I said it was just a safety app, something my dad set up. He laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Your dad gonna come save you." Then he tossed it onto the passenger seat like it was trash and told me I was going for a ride. Sitting in the back of that cruiser, staring through scratched plastic that smelled like disinfectant and old anger. Something shifted in me. It wasn't panic anymore. It was this heavy, sinking understanding that this wasn't about law or safety or weed. It was about power and about how easy it was for someone like him to use it. I thought about my scholarship, my record, how fast all of that could disappear with a few lies typed into a report. I thought about becoming a headline, or worse, a statistic. And I didn't know yet that while I was sitting there, my phone was doing exactly what it was designed to do. See, that phone wasn't just recording audio. The second the cuffs went on, it triggered a silent duress protocol, a direct line to a system my dad had built years earlier. 200 miles away, in a place that technically didn't exist, a screen lit up. No alarms, no flashing red warnings, just clean data, heart rate, elevated audio live, location locked. And my dad saw it. My father, Elias Brooks, isn't a loud man. He doesn't yell, doesn't threaten, doesn't posture. People who don't know him usually underestimate him, and people who do know him never make that mistake twice. He was in the middle of a meeting when the alert came in, and everyone in the room felt the shift even before he stood up. He listened to the audio, heard Mercer's voice saying, "We'll find something," and his face went completely blank. Not angry, not scared, focused. The way some people get right before they act. He didn't argue with anyone. He didn't explain. He just left, got into his car, and made a call. Overwatch, that's all he said. Within minutes, everything about Officer Lane Mercer was on his screen. Complaints quietly dismissed. A body cam that shut off at a very convenient moment. Credit card debt that didn't match his salary. Payments from a shell company tied to a local distributor. Dirty, my dad said out loud and careless. Back at the station, Mercer dragged me into a processing area and cuffed me to a metal bench. My wrists were numb by then, my hands shaking, and I remember staring at the floor because it was easier than looking at his face. He came back holding a little plastic bag and said he found it under my seat. White powder, felony level. I told him it wasn't mine, told him he knew it wasn't, and he shrugged like that didn't matter. That's when the door slammed open. A woman walked in like she owned the place, heels sharp against tile eyes, scanning everything at once. Claire Nolan. She introduced herself calmly, professionally, and said the words Mercer wasn't expecting. "This is now a crime scene. He laughed, tried to brush it off, and she cut him off without raising her voice. She talked about body cams, timestamps, manual shutoffs. Then she turned a tablet around and played a video. The room went silent. On the screen, grainy but clear enough, was Mercer's hand pulling the bag from his own pocket, dropping it onto my floor mat, then pretending to find it. I felt something break open in my chest, then not relief exactly, but validation. Like someone finally said out loud what I'd been screaming inside my head. The cuffs came off. Strong hands cut them away, and suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. My dad was there, his jacket around my shoulders, his arms steady, solid. He didn't say much, just held me, and then he looked at Mercer and told him to step away from his daughter. Mercer reached for his taser. That was the moment when everything tipped. What happened next wasn't dramatic in the way movies make it dramatic. There was no shouting, no brawl. It was fast-controlled, almost surgical. Mercer ended up on the floor, disarmed, staring up at a ceiling that probably looked very different than it had a minute earlier. Federal agents poured in not long after, badges and warrants and authority that couldn't be laughed off. Mercer was let out in cuffs, crying loud and messy, the power he'd enjoyed leaking out of him in real time. Later, much later, I was sitting in a quiet hotel room overlooking the city, wrapped in a blanket, hands wrapped around a cup of water I hadn't touched yet. The adrenaline had worn off, and what was left was this hollow, shaky exhaustion. I asked my dad the question I'd been carrying since I saw him walk into that station. "Who are you really?" He smiled, tired but honest, and said he fixed broken systems. Said he made sure bad people didn't get to hide behind uniforms. I didn't need more than that. What mattered was that he came, that he always would. But here's the part people argue about. Because the story didn't end with Mercer in cuffs, it kept going. The distributor paying him got exposed. The shell company unraveled. A police chief resigned quietly before things got louder. Some people call that justice. Others call it something else. Vigilante, overreach, abuse of power in the opposite direction. And I get that, I really do. Because the truth is, a system that relies on one man stepping in to stop another man from abusing his badge is already broken. The uncomfortable question is, what happens when the wrong person has that kind of reach? Or when no one like my dad is watching? All I know is this. That night I followed every rule. I did everything right. And it still almost cost me everything. If that makes you uncomfortable, it should. If it makes you angry, good. Because silence is the thing this kind of power feeds on. So I want to hear from you. Was this justice, or was it just another imbalance corrected by force? Have you ever been in a situation where doing everything right still wasn't enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments, tell your story. Challenge mine. I read all of it. And if you care about stories like this, real ones, uncomfortable ones, hit subscribe. Because the next conversation we need to have might be even harder than this one.